I want to talk to you about narcissism and how Mike Bickle and some other Christian leaders really define or fall into the definition of this. Because at the end of the day, that's a lot of what we're talking about. What is narcissism? It's a incessant love of self, an excessive and exclusive prioritizing of the self, love of self at the exclusion of other people. And why are narcissists successful? Well, sometimes they really look like super motivated. They can be very extroverted, very gregarious. Mike Bickle certainly falls into this category. He's an excellent communicator. He gets you to believe in what he's saying. Mike got people to believe, thousands, millions of people, millions and millions of dollars, and all of it kind of centered around what he was saying, what the vision he was putting forth. And Elizabeth Herder, who is part of the, advocate group or advocacy group, and she's said this in one or more videos where she's been interviewed. She said, Mike doesn't have friends. Mike has opportunities. And what that means is he might be very friendly and he's super, we're going to do this thing, get you all excited. But really, he's looking out for number one. He's finding a way to get your friendship and then use your skills, your resources, your energy, your time to accomplish his goals. And that's the difference. A real friendship, it's mutual. It goes both ways. They might help you, you might help them. They speak into your life, you speak into them. Mike had some really amazing ways of camouflaging his narcissism. And some of them, the funny thing is they work if your heart isn't off. So something Mike said that I generally receive and still practice is use your critics as your free research team. And even if somebody criticizes you and 90% of what they say is false and wrong and not true, if there's even 10% good in what they're saying, that's a gift to you and you can receive it, you can learn from it. Now, I think there's actually some pretty profound wisdom in there. And Mike would say these things from the pulpit, and you would go, wow, what a smart guy, what a godly guy, someone who's really got their head on straight, and I want to learn from him. And I did. I learned from that. Now, there can be times you just have to throw out what he said or throw out what a critic says. But there's overall a good demonstration of a heart that's like, hey, even if I'm off in 1% or 5% or 10%, I want to learn from that. I really want to pursue holiness. Mike had us all believing he was among the holiest people on the face of the earth. And just through the things he did or said or whatever. But I realize now that even though that is actually good advice and can really work, that I don't think Mike was practicing that, at least not behind closed doors in his own life. And when you hear Alan Hood talk about the reason he turned and began to decide to leave and did leave, had to do with some behind doors discussions of the Brad Tebbutt matter and some of the ways this internal investigation was being handled, and some of the things Mike was saying and doing didn't sit right with Alan. Now, he didn't tell us publicly at the time. He actually said something different, and some people kind of fault him for that, and you can make up your own mind. But I know that he was grieved, and he had someone who had lived and worked under Mike for over a decade at that point, was associate director of the House of Prayer. But he began to see when push came to shove, it was all about Mike Bickle. It was all about preserving Mike Bickle and doing what Mike wanted. And I mentioned as well in a previous short how Mike's granddaughter is interviewed on The Green Room, another podcast or YouTube here. And she says, we all go over there for family, extended family gatherings, and it was just very superficial. It was kind of like, oh yeah, everything's great, but nobody really talked about issues. And then her own dad, Mike Bickle's son, ends up having this multi-year affair that Mike knew about, and some may have even facilitated to some degree. I mean, it's really wacky when you get into it. And yet, Mike allowed his son to continue in this, and publicly never, brought it up, and then got the whole leadership team in his swirl to kind of go along with it, or this narrative. And I remember when the scandal finally did break, mostly about Mike directly, but we later found out it involved this affair. The leader, Stuart Greaves would say this the most. He'd be like, pray for Mike Bickle and for the Bickle family. and for the Bickle family. And I'm like, okay, but at the time, before I knew these details, I'm like, well, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, their pops, their grandpa is now undergoing all this. And I find out, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, he let this go on for like 3 years approximately, maybe longer, I don't know. From what I heard, it was 3 years at least. Both families got divorced. Mike's son and his wife got divorced, and the lady who was having the affair divorced her husband. I mean, and both families had multiple children. I mean, just broke up the families. And this all happened under Mike's watch. This all happened not only under his watch, but under his potential defense. Dean Briggs talked about when Mark, the guy whose wife was having the affair with Mike Bickle's son, like Dean was Mark's supervisor, and early on in this process, Dean didn't know about the affair. Nobody did, really, almost nobody. Mike and Dean went on a walk, and Mike's like, oh yeah, Mark, he's going through some stuff, yeah. Oh, let me handle it. I got this. I'm going to help him. And Dean's like, okay. I mean, Dean trusted Mike. We all did. And now Dean has gone on record talking about that. What you could see is there's this common denominator. There's this swirl around Mike where he's able to get people to do what he wants, and he's able to continue to get what he wants. This is super narcissistic. He is the ultimate arbiter. And you notice truth goes out the window when you're involved or your family's involved. I mean, the truth of a married man having this, or two married people having this affair with kids and spouses involved, and you let it go on for 3 years, that's where I kind of lost it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's horrible. People should not have affairs. Absolutely wrong. It's wrong biblically. It's wrong on every level. But you find out it's going on, okay, a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I mean, you can work with people for a time. Do you want to repent? Do you want to stop having the affair? Do you want to get back together? Of course, we should try to preserve marriages. And there's a level of grace, a level of trying to work with people. I understand all that. I understand there's a process. But 1 year, year and a half, 2 years, 3 years? I mean, really? And you let this go on? And you claim to be so holy and so godly? I mean, this is ridiculous. That's where I lost it. I don't care what details you want to share. There's no excuse, in my opinion, for something like that to go on for 3+ years. Both families get dissolved, and just horrible stuff has gone on. And this under this supposedly super godly man who's leading this, huge ministry and has this worldwide impact and worldwide platform. So, folks, there's classic signs of narcissism here that Mike could get away with these things, do these things, and think it's okay, and continue on in ministry. And then, as the allegations are about to come out, he circles the wagons, preaches this message targeting the advocacy group and the people that are about to level these charges against him, and acting like, oh, this is the black horse coming to get me and bring accusation. I mean, folks, it's a really twisted web. One other thing, if you want more of like what this narcissism looks like, is when you read Murray's response email, Jane Doe's husband, who had finally had the meeting after like 2.5 months, 3 months of fighting to get a meeting with Mike. He finally gets the meeting. He says, yeah, hey, my wife told me that when she was 19, you sexually assaulted her in Paris and had this whole sexual interactions with her over months or a year, I don't know. And Mike's like, wow, he's really rocked by this. And he sends Murray this email, and you can read it. It's just rambling, like stream of conscious. It's out there. And he's like, one thing he says is, I can't believe you would do this to someone who has spent the last 20 years in prayer, like 8 hours a day or something. He also talks about money, like he says, because he had been supporting Murray and Deborah in their ministry. Like, hey, I'll try to get you money anyway, or, if you do this, I'm going to pull the money, but I don't want people to think it's all about the money. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but you can go read it. I mean, he starts talking about these things, and it's really wacky. But you could see the common denominator here is me, what I want. It's not truth. It's not impact on other people. It's not marriages getting broken up and people getting hurt. It's, how could you do this to me? I've been praying. I'm this, it's the persona over the reality. Very classic narcissism.